Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka MBT, and welcome back to Caster's Corner. I didn't even say Cracker Tugas. See, I'm behaved. Today I want to talk pretty specifically about a tournament that happened this most recent weekend, that is the Elestral'S Daybreak event. This was the first webcam tournament in a little while, and there was a ton of hype going into the event. That's because it's also the first event for which Daybreak cards are legal, a bunch of really good players trying to stake their claim as the best in an entirely new metagame. About a week back, I uploaded a video to my channel, MBT Elestral'S, explaining what I thought would happen at this event, and today I'm going to give you a rundown of what occurred, how right I was, and what you can expect moving forward. Let's begin with the players. So in the video last week, I forecasted there were a couple of players to keep an eye on, including all the Knots, primarily Bean Soldier TV and Distant Coder, and Jayak, and all three of those individuals made it into top 4. I'm a genius. I don't know what to tell you. I'm really smart. Jayak ended up winning the entire event, beating Bean Soldier TV in finals, and was the only person to take a set off the boy all day. Oh boy, we are really just living in Superman and Batman's America here. Well, I think the skill gap between the top players and the rest of them isn't as pronounced as it is in a game like Yu-Gi-Oh! It's definitely still present. Just ask me how my first round went. Anyway, let's talk about decks. So I forecasted a couple of decks were going to be very popular, and they were. In my video last week, I forecasted that Earth Nexus, Fives, some Solar something, Chronodial, Curibus, and Wind Toolbox were going to be the decks to watch. And given the people that entered, I think I was probably right. As you can see from this graph, Curibus was the most represented strategy, closely followed by Solar Nexus, Big Body Beatdown, which I guess is what we're calling Fives, Earth Nexus, Monarch, Chronodial, and Wind Toolbox. However, Watch Out is a pretty good name for the Curibus deck because it got absolutely dumpstered. When trying to consider what's the best deck in the room, I think you would have to say it's Earth Nexus. It has a pretty good matchup versus pretty much everything, and took the most slots in top 8 with 4 of them. Coming in a close second, however, was 5 at 3 copies represented in top 8. And you see what they did there? They have Big Body and then they have Water Big Body. His name is Wet Fives. As much as I want to lament how 5 is ruining the game, I think I just kind of need to divorce my understanding of card design from Yu-Gi-Oh! The 5s deck that Jayak played and the other 5s decks represented in Top Cut look radically different, despite the fact that their gameplay loop is pretty similar. This might just be how the game works. You make a decision as to what the most effective and spirit-efficient Elestrals are, and then play them in a tight aggro mid-range game. I'm just hoping that's not the case because it's really boring. Solar topped. I think what we saw this weekend is that there's no definitive build of Solar, and a lot of people were playing a lot of really loose lists that lost to a lot of pretty powerful cards. This weekend I played a pretty bad brew, but I felt pretty good sitting across the table from Solar because I knew they were always going to be in Lavalith range and never really going to accomplish anything unless a Lustragon hit the field. There's also a lot of decks around the periphery. Windburn didn't clear in a top cut, but like 3 or 4 casters bubbled on the strategy, went 4-2 and then lost out on breakers. And Swole got 9th on Monarch, so there's stuff you can play. Unfortunately, I am reticent to tell you that this means that Chronodial and Curibus have now been proven to be completely fraudulent in every single way. Chronodial's just a lot of investment for a card that does lose to adaptable strategies, and Curibus probably has a home in a deck like Jayak's that's natively playing Eddy and Rock and Hard Place, and might enjoy making a monster with 9 attack occasionally. Expect that Curibus stuff to change once Draking gets released on October 1st, but until then, Wexus is feeling a little bit dry. I don't want to gas him up too much, but I really want to draw special attention to this Jayak deck. Main deck choices like 3 Cryoblast clearly served them well, and despite the presence of Specteris in the format, playing cards like Galaxy, kind of ended up working. What's more, once your opponent's seen Galaxy, they're likely going to board into Dense Fog, at which point you can board out of the Galaxy for more realistic 5s like Nekruff. There's very few people citing correctly yet in this format, and I think you are seeing the consequences of it here. Finally, let's talk about what's next. Well, there's a lot of room to grow. Even in the past couple of days, my fellow casters and I have thought up a plethora of decks that I think do very well against strategies like Jayak's and Bean Soldier TVs. Now that we're no longer brewing in a vacuum, it becomes easier to understand what we need to beat and how. There are a lot of decks that don't play by 5's rules, and I think you're going to see those decks develop in the coming weeks. This upcoming weekend's app tournament, for instance, is sure to be pretty exciting. And finally, on October 1st, Draking is going to be legal. Ooh. That card's crazy. I'm going to play it. So that's that. An extremely hyped tournament that's set in stone, the first metagame of the Daybreak season. Now we'll just have to see how it develops together. And if you want some insight, subscribe.